Disclaimer: Star Wars and its characters, as well as the music and intellectual property, belong to the Lucasfilm subdivision of Disney. All usage of these characters falls under fair use through media criticism. We own nothing. Hello everyone, Astovitha back again for another video for Super Origami Universe. And once again, I am not alone. I have two people joining me for this one. Give it up for Nathan the Casual Gamer and Chad Peterson.
Howdy everyone, I'm back once again for another video, this time being a different topic than usual.
Yep, it's me again, and I'm both excited for and dreading this discussion. But I hope it's entertaining regardless. Alright, let's get into today's topic, Star Wars villains.
Star Wars has made some iconic villains over the years, such as Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, Grand Moff Tarkin, and many other iconic villains. But on the other end, there are also some real stinkers. With that said, while it will be tempting to have Disney Star Wars villains dominate the worst list, but for the sake of making the list interesting, we will limit it to just 2 Disney Star Wars villains. We will also discuss the worst villains first, and then do the best after each candidate for the worst list.
One particular villain in the worst list will be a hot take of mine, so you have been warned. Oh, and we will be pulling from official canon as well as non-canon sources such as Star Wars Legends. With that said, let's begin the countdown.
Okay, before you Star Wars Legends fans grab your torches and pitchforks, please hear us out. Abeloth is a villain who just doesn't fit in with the rest of the Star Wars franchise. She is meant to be the mother in the Mortis god pantheon who corrupted herself and turned into an eldritch horror. Suffice it to say, she is a glorified creepypasta in both appearance and lore.
Not to mention, there are villains in Star Wars who practice this eldritch horror style better, such as Dark Nihilus. Meanwhile, Abeloth just exists to fit in with the edgy creepypastas that were common back in the early 2010s. The same reason someone like the Batman Who Laughs exists. I just hope Disney doesn't take fan suggestions from this and leaves Abeloth in the trash can where she belongs.
Overall, she's essentially the Star Wars equivalent of the Batman Who Laughs, except she's worse because she doesn't fit the vibe of the Star Wars franchise in the slightest. And I hope she never becomes canon. Now, let's get to a good one. Now this is a good one. Thrawn is fairly unique in terms of appearance and character, from his calm and collected personality to his extremely high intelligence. Thrawn stands out as one of the smartest villains in all of Star Wars.
His performance from Lars Mikkelsen helps as well with conveying his sinister yet collected personality. He almost never loses his cool, and even when he does, it's only for a few seconds.
The fact that unlike most modern Star Wars villains, he isn't an overly realistic and incompetent piece of shit like Admiral Rampart, Lieutenant Nolan, or the villains from Andor. He's actually pretty likable and competent, and he only really loses due to either incompetence from subordinates or unforeseen circumstances, which shows that he's a formidable foe not to be taken lightly. Now he must proceed even further into the garbage to come. Nute Gunray is just an absolutely pitiful character, from his design just not being that interesting, to his personality pretty much boiling down to being a sniveling coward who falls for Palpatine's manipulations.
Not to mention, despite being in the Star Wars franchise, he's not even slightly capable of doing anything in a fight. Even some human characters like Tarkin were shown to be capable fighters in tie-in comics. So they really dropped the ball with Nute. The only reason he's not any higher is that there really isn't much to talk about when it comes to Nute, so let's move on.
Let's get the biggest problem with Maul out of the way, and say that he suffers greatly from overexposure, especially after his popularity spiked when he reappeared in the Clone Wars TV show, to the point where he made a pointless cameo in Solo: A Star Wars Story, and from what we've seen, he's even getting his own TV show.
Let's hope this one doesn't turn out like the Book of Boba Fett or later seasons of The Mandalorian.
Anyways, aside from that, Maul is a great villain, from his iconic and intimidating design, to his characterization being the embodiment of untamable wrath, and his voice acting, most notably from the great Sam Witwer. He also has one of the most tragic stories in all of Star Wars due to have been raised and abused by Palpatine as an infant to forge him into the perfect assassin. And the only time he's ever experienced peace was when he died. Overall, Maul could have ranked higher, but he suffers slightly from overexposure.
Ziro the Hutt is essentially a lesser version of Jabba in pretty much every way, while Jabba's voice is actually fairly imposing. And while he is a detestable slug, that's the point of Jabba's character. Meanwhile, Ziro is just plain annoying. The voice is irritating, the design is just bad, and overall he's just a discount Jabba.
Yeah, I honestly agree. He's just annoying. He doesn't really have a purpose to the overarching story other than as one of Dooku's accomplices, and he just exists so there's a Hutt villain aside from Jabba. Now let's move on to a classic villain from the very first Star Wars movie.
Now this is a villain that's meant to be hated, done right. From the late Peter Cushing's performance to the follow-up actors who did their best to emulate his character, to his sheer ruthlessness. He's also pretty intimidating if you look deeper into his background.
I mean, when Vader challenged Tarkin to hunt him down, Tarkin and a select group of his men actually gave Vader a hard time. I guess that's what happens when you had a harsh military leader as a dad. Which, by the way, yes, that's one of the reasons why Tarkin is so ruthless.
While some people have criticized Tarkin for being an idiot for blowing up Alderaan, the point of his character wasn't for him to be a military genius. It was to show his ruthlessness, and also to show how Palpatine's imperial regime worked. Ruthless totalitarianism came first, and Tarkin was the perfect example of someone who could do that. Now, if you want a real incompetent and poorly written military villain, then look at the next character.
Phasma's impact in the entire Star Wars franchise can be summed up with only 2 words.
Absolutely nothing!
Phasma essentially exists to be the next Boba Fett or Darth Maul, but she's even worse. Since at least Boba Fett has some interesting aspects to his character and has some of his potential actually fulfilled. And Maul's character was actually well written, if a bit overexposed. Phasma, on the other hand, is the embodiment of wasted potential, and even her tie-in novel doesn't make her more compelling. In fact, it makes her look even worse, since it essentially shows that she became less competent over time.
Not even her design and performance can save her, since it shows how she was wasted potential that much more. Now, let's get to one of the best and most evil villains in all of cinema.
Palpatine would have been number one if not for his fan-servicey return in Rise of Skywalker, which kinda undermined Darth Vader's character arc and ultimate redemption. But really, that's the only problem with Palpatine.
Aside from that hiccup, Palpatine is one of the greatest villains in all of sci-fi and fantasy, from Ian McDiarmid's chilling performance, to his personality being the embodiment of evil yet hammy, to being an absolute powerhouse when he needs to be, and finally, orchestrating pretty much all of the important events in the series. Palpatine really is the ultimate evil in this franchise. I just hope Disney doesn't try and give him a sob story in some kind of poor thought out prequel series.
Yeah, Palpatine is meant to be the absolute worst in terms of morality. Palpatine is a no nuance allowed zone.
Alright, so who's next? Oh no, we have to talk about that guy. But first, let's go through some dishonorable mentions.
General Hux from the sequel trilogy, a whiny ripoff of Tarkin who had potential but was transformed into a comic relief for no reason.
Dryden Voss from Solo: A Star Wars Story, a low-level gangster who serves for build-up to a pointless cameo.
Sebulba from Phantom Menace, an asshole rival who just exists for the sake of adding a villain other than Watto to the Anakin Skywalker subplot.
Commander Gideon Hask from Star Wars Battlefront 2, a generic antagonist with two of the worst boss battles in Star Wars gaming history.
And Allegiant Pride from Rise of Skywalker, another ripoff of Tarkin who serves no purpose other than to be Palpatine's lackey.
Now, let's get to the recap.
Number 5, edgy creepypasta. Number 4, sniveling corporate leader.
Number 3, annoying slug.
And number 2, wasted potential.
Should have seen this one coming. Snoke is not only the worst Star Wars villain, but one of the worst villains in media history.
For starters, he is a literal Palpatine wannabe who wears a golden bathrobe and has a moldy peach for a head.
And like Phasma, Snoke is the embodiment of wasted potential, and he's also an idiot who didn't even pay attention to the lightsaber rotating right next to him because he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to his surroundings. The only props I will give is that Andy Serkis's portrayal is actually fairly decent. But overall, Rian Johnson dropped the ball with this one. But I suppose I won't be too harsh since sci-fi movies are not his forte and you are likely to fail when it comes to making a movie about a genre you don't have any experience with.
Now let's do some honorable mentions before we get to the best of the best.
Cad Bane from various shows. He's essentially a better version of Boba Fett, with a more unique style to him.
Count Dooku. He's not the best villain by a long shot, but his refined mannerisms, mixed with the late Christopher Lee's performance, and later Corey Burton's performance, certainly helps him stand out.
Moff Gideon, one of Giancarlo Esposito's most chilling and memorable villain roles ever.
General Grievous. He may not be everyone's favorite, but he's certainly a unique villain and a great way to make a less human and more vicious version of Darth Vader.
And Jabba the Hutt. He may be a detestable slug, but hey, he was meant to be a detestable slug. And he does that pretty well, and unlike Ziro, he's actually a bit menacing.
Alright, time for the recap. Number 5, one of the most competent Imperial commanders ever. Number 4, red and black tattooed assassin with a tragic backstory.
Number 3, the most ruthless commander in the Imperial military.
And number 2, the evil ruler of the Empire and the most evil Sith Lord in Star Wars canon.
Now this is where it's at. Darth Vader is the GOAT of Star Wars villains, and quite possibly Star Wars characters, period.
Vader's design is the perfect blend of menacing, iconic, yet charmingly simple, and his voice is no different. The late James Earl Jones delivers a performance that is menacing, yet surprisingly expressive, and is instantly recognizable.
And like every good Enforcer-type villain, Darth Vader is a powerhouse. And Vader is only properly defeated in combat at the end of the original trilogy, when the original trilogy first came out. Vader also demonstrates a commanding presence due to his immense power, which makes him that much better.
Not to mention his backstory. He's pretty much the modern archetype of the tragic fallen hero character. From his childhood as a servant either under Watto, to serving under the Jedi Order with strict codes on lacking attachments, all the way to being groomed into the perfect apprentice to Palpatine. Anakin's transformation into Vader is highly nuanced and incredibly sympathetic.
Overall, Darth Vader is easily the best villain in the franchise and the best villain in cinematic history, and chances are he will keep his legacy intact for generations to come. Unless Disney messes that up. Alright, that's our list of the best and worst villains in all of Star Wars. But if you have your own list, feel free to leave it in the comments below. And share your thoughts on our list as well. With that said, I hope to see you all in the next video. May the stars shine down on you.
Okay, with all that taken care of, I hope you all have a great day, and may the 4th be with you.
Alright, I hope you all enjoyed this video and look forward to what we've got planned in the future with our solo content, as well as our Super Origami Universe videos. But until then, we'll see you guys in the next video. See ya, chump!